Welcome back. This is the AM show brought to you by Waylead Properties Limited, and this is AM exclusive. My guest is already in the studio with me, and I'm particularly excited. Let me introduce him. My guest for AM exclusive today is Mr. Fritz Baffour, former Information Minister and former Member of Parliament for Ablekuma South. Sir, it's such an honor to speak with you. Good morning and welcome to the AM show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Where have you been? It's been a while, like we caught wind of you.
I'm around.
Yeah?
Very much so.
But low-key, quiet?
No, I'm not quiet.
No? Okay. Let's get the conversation started. I know that many people know you as a journalist, a politician, a communication consultant. Which one do you prefer to go by often?
Ghanaian.
Okay, what does that mean? Who are you? Who's Fritz Baffour? We know what you've done in this country before, but how do you introduce yourself?
As I said, I'm a Ghanaian, a very proud Ghanaian.
Okay.
I love this country very much. It's my comfort zone. My friends are here, my family, most of my family are here, and I get my inspiration from Ghana. So I'm very much a Ghanaian. Okay. I can't even say I even have a hometown because I come from different places. My parents are have strands from all over Ghana, so that's why I say I'm a Ghanaian.
Okay.
But naturally, you live in certain areas. I've lived in, apart from my years abroad and living in Kumasi with my dad, I've lived in Koligono.
Yeah.
So I'm a Koligono boy. Okay. You understand? Yes. And my mother has very strong Ghana roots. So I've been made a traditional ruler in one of the outlying villages in Accra.
Okay.
So through family connections. So, but I'm a Ghanaian. Okay. I have roots from the north to the south, east to the west. Okay.
And I want to focus, the conversation will focus on your career in politics and maybe the media space, journalism and bits like that. Right. But I want to start from politics.
Yeah.
Are you still part of the NDC?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very, very much so. I'm a member of the Council of Elders of the region. So I'm very much a member of the party. Okay. And a working member of the party. Okay.
Since President John Dramani Mahama took office,
yes,
have you had any interactions, encounter? Are you doing anything actively from the NDC?
Yes, as a member of the Council of Elders, naturally we work and we give advice.
Okay.
And I think that is the position I've taken at the moment.
Right.
All right, because I'm past retirement. All right, I'm a grandfather of 5 children, grandchildren, and so you know what do I expect?
Well, I asked because it looks like you weren't quite friendly with some members of the party. The last I read so many articles on you, and I know that when you decided to go with Alban Bagbane instead of President John Dramani Mahama at the time, yes, some people spoke about you being, disloyal to the party and so on and so forth. Well, I'm just asking to bring clarity to the matter.
You're right to ask me those questions. Disloyal to the party, I was a founding member of the party. Yeah. I traveled the length and breadth of this country working for the party, and I still work for the party. I can never be disloyal to NDC. Okay. But I'm honest to myself, and I told you I'm a Ghanaian. And if there are concerns that transcend party lines, right, I will speak up. Now, I didn't have anything against President John Mahama. When he lost the election, my belief was that he should become a statesman. All right? I've been proven wrong. I'm glad I've been proven wrong because he's rebounded and he's doing his best, all right? But we are mortal, and we make mistakes. But at the time, I felt that Alban Bagbane was a great potential as a president of Ghana. And so that's why I went for him. And I'm proud to know him. He's a man I respect, and he's a man I uphold with a lot of honor and privilege in working with him.
How does it look from your perspective? Active member of the party, no issues there, but how does it look in this short month, 3 months or so in office as president? I know you just said that he's doing his best, but if I was to ask for an assessment of his short term in office so far, what would that be from your perspective?
I think it's very unfair for us to assess him in 3 months.
Okay.
Because we are in a state of flux. He hasn't appointed all his appointees. We haven't put our MMDCs into place. The budget has just been read.
Right.
The impact has not been felt. And earlier on, when I was looking at your program, I saw the taxmen talking. And they said, look, you can't even feel the impact now. The good thing is that there's an air of hope and freedom, which we needed, because the 8 years was a horror story for me.
How horrible was it?
I won't demonize the MPP.
Okay.
I refuse to do that, because there are some very good people in the MPP. People who love Ghana just as much as I do, or even more so. But I felt that we went through a period where we did not care too much about the people on the street. And they are the ones who keep us going. They are the ones who make Ghana. You have to care about the man and woman on the street. And you can't take them for granted. And so that was the situation for me. That's why I'm a social democrat.
Right. So let's stay on that for a bit. Although it's too early to critique or to criticize or, assess this government, like you've said, there are things that they said they would do that they're doing. And it's not everything that they've done so far that is sitting well with some people. For example, you look at the revocation of those appointments that were made, and it fits into their promise of a lean government, but it's affected some lives. And there are so many other things, like the approach to handling Galamsey. Before coming into office, he did say he will revoke LI 2462, and now we are looking at an amendment. We asked for a state of emergency. We haven't seen that yet. So I know, and I agree with you, that there might be some air of hope, but are these not issues that we can actually assess the president on? Yeah.
Galamsey is a very serious problem. And where I stand, I believe that we're not handling it right at all.
Yeah?
The previous government and the present government, their approach is a little wrong. Because, let me tell you something, I was chairman of Defense and Interior in Parliament for 4 years. My greatest love is military history. And I have a lot of friends in the military and the security services. I interact with them. I've been a journalist in war situations, 2 war situations. And so, from what I've gathered, you don't use soldiers internally unless it's for a very short-term operation. Because the army or the military, when you use them, whatever operation they have is time-bound, all right? Go in there, capture the town, and then we'll move in. You go in there and you can't capture the town, and you fail your objective, you retreat.
Right.
Now, I believe to solve the Galamsey problem in this country, we have to have a dedicated forest ranger force.
The Blue Water Guards is not.
That is pitiable. You need to put people who understand the forest, people who are knowledgeable about the environment. We can get help from Kenya. We can get help from South Africa. We've got a jungle warfare training center in Achasi. We can put all our things together, talk to the EPA guys, talk to geologists and everything, and put together a dedicated force. That's objective is only to defend the forests and environment of Ghana. And they've got to be armed, because the situation in Ghana, in the forest, is not safe. The illegal miners are armed.
Yeah.
You don't need the army, you don't need the police. The police have their job to do. When you arrest people, you hand them over to the police and they go through the travails of law. But you need a dedicated force. And that's what we've got to work on now.
But you just said we don't need the army, you don't need the police.
No, I'm talking in enforcement.
Okay.
You need a force to protect our forests and our environment.
And it cannot come from the army?
No, they've got to be trained, a dedicated force. It can be a separate security service, but their job is to protect the forests of Ghana. All right, that's one.
Okay.
And secondly, we've got to also look holistically. How did those mining equipment and dredges, how did they come into Ghana? We have a GRA. We have security services and everything. We have DVLA that registers all of these things. They should have been stopped at that level. But these things come through. How do they get through? How do they get to the areas? We have districts, district assemblies and everything, and they should know when anything comes into their area. And all these things are what I worry about. We talk too much about the end result, and we don't talk about the prevention. And the prevention is what's most important. And that's why we have a Galamsey problem here.
Actually, that's a good point. You know, there's an argument ongoing now as to whether or not we should ban excavators when they're seized. I know this administration say they want to keep it as a way of tracking, use it as evidence to prosecute those criminals, because they are criminals, what they're doing to our water bodies and forests. Weighing on this argument, should we be banning these excavators or should we keep them? I
think we have engineers who can assess the use of those excavators by the state. And one thing I believe in is that in the areas where it's been very difficult for Ghanaian contractors to access, to build roads, cocoa roads and things like that, in America, they use the army, the military engineers. All right? They built the Panama Canal. They built the levees in Louisiana. And even in Britain, when there are problems, they bring them in because the engineers, they are experts at building such facilities very fast. So if we give those excavators to the military and we paint them green and they're used for the purposes of making this country more accessible to our people, fine. But it's a suggestion. And these things I'm throwing are opinions that have got to be considered.
Okay. So you also said that we are not doing well at all. You mentioned a dedicated force to fight Galamsey. How about declaring the state of emergency? And that maybe the last bit on Galamsey. Do we need that, do you think?
No, you don't. Because when you declare a state of emergency, it affects the innocent. All right? And we're talking about rural areas where people have to farm. So they've got to get up early.
But these guys are giving up their farmlands to illegal miners.
How many of them? The thing is that the impact of Galamsey is immense. But the people who are affected are also immense. So we have to really consider very, 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 very hard before we say something like state of emergency or whatever.
Okay. Now let's go to Parliament. You were a member of Parliament. Observing how this 9th Parliament is taking off and all the drama that we've been seeing, especially from the Appointments Committee up to this point. Yesterday, actually, I was surprised. Avenue Markin was saying that they're giving their full support to the majority in passing that repeal bill and all. But it hasn't been a smooth time in Parliament. You've been watching. Have you been enjoying the show?
No. It was a shock to most Ghanaians, the defeat of MPP.
Really?
Yes.
Most Ghanaians were shocked?
At least. Most Ghanaians I knew didn't. I'm not talking about the defeat.
Right.
I'm talking about the magnitude.
Okay. The margin.
Right? Yeah. And if you had a number of MPs, 137, and now you have 88, if I'm right, then you've lost the governance of the country. You're in a state of shock. And for ego, for pride, for honor, you've got to do something about it. And it manifests itself in the way they behaved. Afinia Markin, I know very well. I've never seen any unpleasantness from him privately, as of the people in the minority now. Outside the chamber, we're all very cordial. And I think that we should start extending that cordiality to inside the chamber too. We don't have to show off. Because you see, my problem about Ghana is that we're not a developed country, we're a developing country. So we've got to work together. All right? We can't demonize each other, fight each other. And I'm not a dove. I just believe in the reality that this country is such a wonderful country. It's a very wealthy country. And the reason why we are in such a horrible state is we've mismanaged our resources, including our human resource base.
How are we doing that?
We've mismanaged it, the way we've handed out contracts, the way we've looked at our resources, the way we look at our human resource base, the fact that we don't hold them in high esteem, we don't have the policies that will help them work for Ghana. And I hate the politicization of Ghana. I don't believe that politics should invade certain institutions of Ghana, because you need a clear mind in order to do things. And with politics, when you hold a political position, it can be stubborn.
Yeah.
All right? And so that's the problem.
Okay. So you've not been enjoying the show. If they were listening to you right now, both majority and minority, what would you say to them? As someone who was in their shoes at some point.
I'll tell them to come together.
Yeah.
I mean, naturally, we'll have our different positions, but we have to start showing the people out there that we're working together. If we don't work together, this country is not going to be saved. Okay.
Now the judiciary. We know that the president is currently in consultation with the State Council of States. Why are you smiling? Right. I want to pick your thoughts on that. Many have said that this is just politics playing out, and but the president did say, I mean, as far as we know from that statement, that 3 petitions were served, which he forwarded to the Council of State to determine whether there's a prima facie case to even prove and all that. What do you think is happening here? Because our constitution actually gives us the right to do the processes that we are following right now.
You've answered your question. Oh. Because you said the constitution gives us the opportunity.
Yeah, but many of the opinion that...
So if people petition, then it has to be considered.
Right.
Whether it's going to be positive or negative depends on the Council of State and the legal system that we use to determine whether the Chief Justice should be impeached or removed or what. You understand? It's because we have distrusted the system that we've used them politically in the past, that has created this distrust and this kind of talk. The thing is, we've got to start being honest with ourselves and doing things properly, especially when we're doing it for the people.
Could we maintain Chief Justice Gertrude Tokono?
I'm not a lawyer. I have a lot of...
You're a statesman.
Yeah, but I have I've got a lot of friends who are lawyers. The verdict out there is 60-40, that she's all right, that she's capable. Maybe she was caught in between the devil and the deep blue sea in the previous political dispensation, so she had to protect herself. And that's all I can say about it, really.
Okay. Last thing, and then we get into journalism proper, but it's connected. You know that the former IGP sort of centralized the flow of information, communication flow. And although we went along with it, many people didn't like that. Something could happen somewhere in a district and you had to go to the headquarters for information. And sometimes there were issues of accuracy in terms of the details that were reported. Now we have a new IGP and he's taken that sort of gag off, so to speak. How do you feel about that?
Well, George Dampari was a good policeman. He was a friend of mine. I liked him. He'd done his studies. He was strict, and he had his own ideas. And he felt that at a certain time, the press relations, the media relations of the police wasn't as efficient as he wanted it to be. So I'm sure he centralized it to try and clean it up. All right, maybe he didn't have enough time to finish his objective. But there are different ways of dealing with the media, and that is one. I've always believed in decentralization, but you also have to have training, and you have to have a certain sense of purpose in order to do that.
Yeah.
So if IGP Onu has changed things, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So the same question, could we have maintained, although it's past and gone?
It's different strokes for different folk.
Okay. Now, journalism in Ghana today is under some immense scrutiny. We're talking about press freedom, whether or not, the space is free for us to share opinions, critique government when we have to and all that. You mentioned, or we started by saying there's a new era of hope in this country. Do you think that reflects in the media? Do you think there's more freedom within the media space now? Having been a journalist yourself at some point.
I think the media at the moment is being very tentative. They're not sure who they're dealing with yet. Yes, I can see that. Are we in
for some surprises, do you think?
It will happen. But when it comes to the media, I think that the regulations that were supposed to govern the media have not been enforced. We were not supposed to have religious stations. We were not supposed to have tribal stations. We were not supposed to have certain stations. And we were supposed to have very strict controls before you set up your television outlet or your radio outlet and all that kind of thing. And you weren't supposed to have a strictly a station owned by politicians per se. All these things have been ignored. So the space is basa-basa. And basa-basa. Because it's not clean. We have to look at it, but we have to be very, very careful, because if we start putting sanctions into place, they'll be looked on as political. Because I saw the terrible thing that was done when Radio Gold was banned and other radio stations were removed from the airwaves and all that. Because people can use politics to do harm because they can skirt around the regulations. But I believe that we should really look at the standards and the quality of our media productions and products.
Okay. So, I want to take your reflections on some current affairs, things that are happening right now that I want you to get a bite on. Let's start with the Signal Bureau boss, Edu Boahin. We know as we speak that he sued Iyoko and the AG over that 200 million cedis bail. And the issues that the AG explained to us, it started with, why are we hunting this man down? People didn't really understand. And then he held a press conference to elaborate on the matter. I think there and then many people judged him because court of public opinion. If we heard that you've taken taxpayers' money to go and buy 27 houses somewhere while the ordinary Ghanaian is struggling to make ends meet, it makes for interesting TV, actually.
It does.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
But at this point where we've seen so far it's still an alleged crime, they haven't actually gone to court and tried this case yet. But where do you sit? Or where do you stand?
I think it shows the flaws in our system.
The flaws?
We've got serious flaws in our preventive system. If somebody can go to a bank and take 7 million cedis out, whether it's his money or not, it should raise red flags, either for GRA, for those monitoring authorities, because there's something wrong with it. 7 million cedis out, because now you can't take 50,000 cedis out of your bank account. But why else 7 million? I am not indicting anybody, but I'm saying that our institutions are not doing their work. And I mentioned that with Galamsey. Now, we also have our Richard Quay, those who spend $3.5 billion or so, that's what they say. And our taxmen it's only after the event. You understand? Look, in the United States, you can't take out $10,000. All right?
If you were to make an educated guess.
Yes.
Well, how would you say this happened without us catching on? Like you said, the flaws. What exactly happened there?
Because we don't have monitoring, and then we also have political interference. Or certain people assume political powers that are beyond the bounds of our legal system. All right? I'm just saying that we have border controls.
Somebody ought to have said something.
Something,
seen
yes.
Something.
Yes. And you know, I worked in a government institution. Another time, the board had not been put into place, or the board had just been put into place, and we needed some equipment, and I was the CEO. And so I went and I said, let's go, and went through, at that time, the procurement procedure and bought it.
Okay.
And then I reported to the board, and the board gave it to me well, because they said I hadn't been given the approval. So I understood it. Later on, I realized that that is the way we do things. The Signal Bureau should have a board. Every single government institution should have a board, and that board should monitor the incomings and the outgoings, and then be ready to sanction or to take an effective action if they feel there is an anomaly. That's it.
Let's put the whole corruption umbrella, the whole corruption industry, because it's a thriving industry in this country. Let's put it on the table. I know that in the lead up to election 2024, Bawumia was saying his approach would be to use digitalization or digitization, remove the human interface, and then it removes the temptation to sin. I don't know exactly how oral is meeting us at the point of our needs in terms of our quest to eradicate corruption, but I want to put that canvas in front of you to paint that picture for us.
Well,
how are we dealing with corruption? Is it effective?
Look, I think President Baffour said most people are corrupt.
Yeah.
It is not that
from the days of Adam, I think.
Yeah. But it's not of corruption. People will do things if they are not caught. There are very few people in this world who are that innately so honest, so holy, that they wouldn't do things that are negative if they realize they can get away with it. So what we have to do is we have to put, I'm not saying that we're corrupt, I'm just saying that it's a human tendency and it's acknowledged. And that's why we have government institutions and we have public institutions that are supposed to monitor that. Look, I have a German friend, and I was walking with him and he said to me, Ghanaians are very, very honest. And I said, why? He said, I don't see any policemen. I said, why? He said, in Germany, around every street corner, there's a policeman to enforce the rules and regulations of that particular area or the state. So it shows you that we don't have the policing, the institutions that are supposed to police individuals and the operations of government institutions are not doing their work. And we have to strengthen them. And that is where I think that would be one of the first steps to trying to remove corruption or reduce corruption.
That's one of the things we saw under IGP Dampare's time. We saw police visibility.
Yes.
At least all the major, streets or checkpoints, you see police there.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time we started seeing motor riders stop at the traffic lights. So maybe that's just to his credit.
They didn't stop in certain places. And please,
I saw some of them stop at some places.
Success is somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that. Because I know that they're trying to review that policy right now. And I think it helps us as Ghanaians in terms of beating the traffic, delivery. Deliveries are also a thriving business now.
Yeah.
Should we just regulate and legalize Okada business in Ghana?
That is a conundrum for me.
Okay.
Because there's a certain element of danger. If we are going to legalize Okada, then we've got to rigidly enforce the traffic regulations. If we don't, we're going to have a lot of injuries
what would that look like?
Fatalities. Well, it's a question of when you register them, you find out where they are, where they live and all that. So there's some kind of recourse to finding them if there's a problem. And then we also have to ensure that they know that they're being watched. You understand? It's a big brother effect. And that's why I say there's a conundrum. Because when you do that too, it also, impacts on our freedoms and things like that. Okay. But it's a topic for discussion.
Okay. So aside the Signals Bureau former boss. There's also the issue of the Bank of Ghana's former governor, the rage on the home of the former Bank of Ghana, Dr. Addison. Many have said that the approach was wrong because you don't disable CCTV if you're going into someone's home with a warrant and good intentions or just to do your job. Others have also said that the system requires a different approach, you know, because they did promise us accountability, transparency, and what was that, jobs, I think, and oral operation recover all loot. These are just the machinations in place to deliver on their mandates. But what do you say on the raid of the bank?
We are in a state of transition. And our transition is not a very good transition. And so certain things would happen that normally you would disapprove. I've never really liked playing to the gallery when it comes down to arrests and things like that. But there are some people who have that belief that we're going to show the world that we're working against corruption. All right?
So it's just about the optics?
Very much so, in a lot of ways. Because you can do it differently and be just as effective. But the optics are important now because we've got a lot of people out there. I'm on the platforms. And when I even raise my, objection to some of these things, I am lashed. You understand? Because I realize that that is how they feel. And I can't say that I'm always right and they are wrong. But with my sensibilities and sensitivities, I believe that sometimes we have to be subtle in the way we do things. But I have no objections to it.
Does this then reveal some, I don't want to say rots, but gaps in the way we transition? Should we be looking at something that reforms the entire transition system? Because we are looking at people whose means of livelihood have been taken away from them because apparently they were appointed or employed after a particular date and it wasn't supposed to be so. There was an agreement that was broken. We are looking at raids on state-owned institutions. We are looking at invading people's privacies and so on and so forth. What should we be doing?
There you go.
Right.
We have to really sit down and have an informed a conversation about how we deal with the transitions. All our transitions are like a coup d'etat. We've taken over power. Well, let's punish these guys. Let's get rid of these guys. We don't trust, because it's based on a great distrust between the partisan positions in this country. And we have got to really resolve that because there are other problems to be resolved. And if we keep on carping at each other and not giving ourselves the opportunity to talk to each other, those problems, all right, will be exacerbated.
Okay. Final bit, and then we go to some quick fire rounds. On the constitutional review work that is currently ongoing,
yes.
I think all these things feed into the constitution that actually gives us the powers to do the things the way we are doing it currently. What are your top 3 things that we should prioritize in our quest to review the Constitution and make it a working document that suits this era as we speak?
I've got a comment to make. In 2012, when I was the Minister of Information, that was when the Constitutional Fiajo Committee came out. Mm-hmm. The document itself, I recommend to every Ghanaian worth his salt to read. It was a magnificent document, because they did their work. Yeah. And yet, the findings were not put into place. We're doing it again. Fine. I know the present crop of guys will do a wonderful job, but will we have the political will to make the changes? That's one. Secondly, I look at Parliament. Parliament is supposed to be a legislative body, makes laws, all right? And we adopted the British system at independence. Yeah. Because that's what we knew. Okay. And then after Nkrumah was overthrown, we had a separation of we just took on the British system, but we had a president. And he wasn't a ceremonial president, he was an executive president, but his powers were limited by some aspects of parliamentary procedure. Yeah. Then in the Third Republic, we had a complete separation of powers. But there was a problem, a human problem. let's say we have a complete separation of powers. So people go to Parliament, or they go to their party, sends its people into Parliament. Some would lose, but they'll be very, very influential people, but they've lost their seat. What do? You make them ministers, okay? Mm-hmm. So they are now ministers. Now, in reality, the salaries of members of Parliament and the salaries of ministers are virtually at par, except that there are certain perks that the ministers have. And then also, the social conditioning of Ghanaians is that a minister is more powerful than a
Absolutely, which is why when some members of Parliament didn't get appointments, their constituency constituents were setting things ablaze there and there.
Yeah, that's right. So in the Third Republic, where we had a complete separation of powers, you've won your seat. For instance, Ablikwa South, I won my seat, 15,000. Somebody loses his seat and he's made a minister, all right? And he's got a house, he's got a car, he's got police escorts, he gets a pride of place when they go to gatherings and things like that. The human factor is look at that. But the thing is that if we make Parliament as important in terms of their role, and we do the civic education for Ghanaians to understand it, then it'll be so. So do you know what happened? People started, within the parties themselves, started carping at the ministers who were, and that's why the budget wasn't passed. The Bene budget wasn't passed. So this was taken into consideration when we were considering the Fourth Republican Constitution. So I'm expecting the Constitutional Review Committee to come out with a solution to that. You understand?
Right.
So I've just given you a historical background, but I believe that if you want to be a parliamentarian, be a parliamentarian. If you want to be a minister, be a minister. So that, and then the ministers are under they come and they have to report to Parliament, and Parliament can tell them what to do. You understand?
Would that not increase the number of government officials we have? And if we have ministers who are not from Parliament,
that's a very good question, because you know that I've said that we've got too many parliamentarians.
Yes, you have.
That is my private opinion.
Okay.
I don't think we should have more than 200 MPs. And I think we have too many districts. And I know that people from certain regions will throw stones at me, but I believe that we have too many regions.
You were former information minister.
Right.
Now we don't have that ministry.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, if I were to talk, they'll say maybe I'm defending a certain position.
Yeah.
But the Ministry of Information came about from Nkrumah's time, where we'd taken over, we got our independence, and Kwame Nkrumah believed that if we wanted to get reportage from every single area of the country, the best people to give us a reportage would be journalists who are trained to seek out information and report. And so we had the Information Services Department that reported to the minister. The minister would deal with policy and analysis, and then they would send the information. If there was security considerations, they'll send them out, and all that kind of thing. Maybe now, with the new kind of media facets or areas, I think maybe it has become a little outdated. So what they've done in saying government, so that when I was Minister of Information, I represented the government and not the presidency. But now they've put those two together because the presidency and governance in this present dispensation is united. So I don't have any objection to it.
Okay. So now let's do this quick fire. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have to answer in one sentence or one word. Are you ready? One Ghanaian politician you deeply respect.
Babin.
Good answer. Best journalist you've ever worked with.
David Baffour.
Okay. Your biggest regret in politics?
I don't have one.
Okay. One policy you wish Ghana had implemented years ago, which would have propelled us to be a developed country, not still developing?
Unity of purpose.
Okay. And lastly, your favorite Ghanaian comedian today, because you were once a comedian.
Yes. I think that would be unfair.
No, just pick one. Just one.
DKB.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. My producer just saying that I should run this by you. Should we still take ministers from Parliament? I thought he answered that, but should we still take ministers from Parliament?
I think that, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, Mr. Fritz Baffour, thank you for joining us. And I know that we are not here to talk about creative arts, but I do want to take...
I don't mind.
Okay, I want to take your view on that before we go. Please permit me. How are we doing in terms of exporting talent outside the country? Because a lot of these creatives are actually leaving the country to go and explore opportunities outside. Yeah, because most of them don't even intend to come back into the country.
We don't look after them well.
Yeah.
I believe that we've got to do a little bit more about our cultural awareness, that we start inculcating our culture into our educational system right from the beginning. That will help us, because we don't know anything about our culture. We don't know anything about our history in reality. We don't know enough about ourselves, you know. And so, therefore, when we do these things, people will then appreciate our culture. You see somebody dancing at Adowa, I'm sure if you had a child and you say, what's that dance? They wouldn't know it. And what is the importance of Adowa, the dance Adowa, all right, or Panlugu for that matter? Where did it come from? All these things are very, very, very important. And the history of this country is such a wonderful history. That is what has made us such a wonderful people.
Our history.
Yeah, because we are born to be together. We are people who marry out, we don't marry in, all right? We are people who go out and travel, and we are great people because we are hospitable to each other. Yet, we don't know the reasons why we do so.
Are we losing our history?
Yes.
How do we stop that from happening?
The Historical Society of Ghana, all historians in academia should get together and start producing the right kind of books, the right kind of information, and we have to start teaching history from day one.
Thank you so much for joining us for an exclusive interview this morning. My guest, thank you, Mr. Fritz Baffour, former Information Minister and former Member of Parliament for Ablekuma South. There's still so much more coming your way on the AM show. I'm really excited. Please stay. We'll be right back.